Shalom is real. I want to give all praises, all honor, and all glory to whom it rightfully belongs, which is Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai. Yahweh is who the world ignorantly calls God. Yahweh Shai is his son, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, and is no God beside them. Double honors to the elder apostles and the elder bishops of Great Millstone for being faithful witnesses to the Holy Spirit, and salutations to the elect whom the Lord have given ears to hear. And here I am, looking at the natural news site, and this article stood out to me, especially being that we are in today's the 27th, the last Thursday of November, which is Thanksgiving, or as we affectionately call it, Thanksgiving. All right, here in the States. Now it says more than 100,000 turkeys killed in Utah over bird flu scare. And what I've been noticing is for the past maybe 6 years or so, there's been a lot of bird flu variants that's been coming out. Now it says bird flu is making headlines as Thanksgiving approaches, with more than 100,000 turkeys being killed in Utah recently after the presence of avian influenza was confirmed there. The disease is highly pathogenic, and culling flocks is common to prevent the spread of infection. All right, and as we know, according to prophecies, that there will be a famine. And I was speaking with a brother, and he had asked me, how is these devils going to hide all this food? Because a famine, it either means that there's no food or there's not access to get any food. And as prophecy must come to pass, I'm seeing now that slowly but surely this devil is cutting down the food supply. All right, from various droughts to so-called natural disasters, and now a number of variants. So it says the disease is highly pathogenic, and culling flocks is common to prevent the spread of infection. An update issued on November 22nd by the Utah Department by Agriculture and Food explained that 3 turkey farms. Salaki, one second. It says, an update issued on November 22nd by the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food explained that 3 turkey farms in Piute County with 107,800 turkeys in a backyard flock with 253 turkeys were confirmed positive, and the strains involved are now being genetically sequenced. Salakia. The agency said, though the overall risk to public health remains low, HPAI is a serious disease requiring rapid response, including depopulation of affected flocks, as it is highly contagious and fatal to poultry. They also advise poultry owners to monitor their flocks for signs of illness and take immediate action if they spot them, while those who work in close contact with any affected birds should take the recommended precautions, which include wearing personal protective equipment. It's the second outbreak there in 2 months. More than 1.85 million birds were affected in Cache County last month. There are currently 5 Utah poultry farms in quarantine. In the nation overall, there have been 47 flocks with confirmed infections during the last 30 days, after affecting a total of more than 5.21 million birds. So there's a lot of birds being affected, and it's not just a one-off event. It's various events. And here it is with the increased demand. With the increased demand of turkeys, chickens, various livestock. It being the holiday season. All right, it's only a matter of time before it hits the people. I see that. And this is just a pretty much a update on the famine, all right, which is prophesied as I mentioned before, and how this devil, another avenue how this devil can come down, because at this so-called holiday season, you have the weather changing, which already brings out flu-like symptoms in everyone. That include that in addition to the fucked up foods people eating nowadays. In addition to these various poultry outbreaks, it links to another outbreak this devil can push. And of course nobody's paying attention to news like this. I mean, even if it was, which we're going to check out in a little bit, even if a news, this is a alternative news site, but even if it was on a CNN, people wouldn't care, or even people for the most part would not care. All right, this is a demonic season. All right, this is a season where it's pretty much like a rinse and repeat cycle. You have time off of work, you go to travel, you stuff your face, with various foods, and it's a high chance for this to spread. All right, and as we know, this devil already moves in problem reaction solution scenarios. All right, there's also a quote amongst top officials where they say never let a good crisis go to waste. All right, and I just pointed out a few scenarios that can come out of this, but the scriptures say how these devils, their mind is deep, so it can be a lot that can come out of this. It says this is according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, who note that the biggest number of infections was recorded in California at 29. Meanwhile, Washington and Colorado have seen 11 and 10 cases respectively, while Michigan has 2 cases, and Texas, Missouri, and Oregon each have 1. In another scenario that will happen, not that could, I was going to say that could, but that actually will happen, which is also according to scriptures, is that things will be very expensive. Meat will be very expensive. All right, because simple economics tells us that when you have less of a product, but the same amount of people, even more, is going to want it, then that product is now more expensive. And if, let's say, a farm near you, is affected, then the supermarket is now going to have to go further to bring those products to you. So now they're going to have to pay more in gas for the trucking, and it's going to be more expensive to the consumer at the end of the day. So it says, however, poultry accounted for just 21 of these cases, while 32 of them were attributed to cattle. All of those affected were farm workers, most of whom experienced mild symptoms. In California, 1 case was confirmed in a child, marking the first report of avian flu in a minor. None of the child's family members tested positive for it. According to U.S. Geological Survey officials, avian flu can spread in domestic poultry via clothing, equipment, and feed that has been contaminated, in addition to spread through direct contact with wild birds. Now here's the juicy part. Since the bird flu spread to humans and spark a new Pan D. Virologist Richard Webby, who has studied avian flu viruses since 1997, said there are some concerns the virus can mutate into a human one and then be spread among people. Flu viruses make a lot of mutations when they replicate. Every time there's an infected host, there's a chance that key mutations will emerge. And if that happens in the right place, where an infected animal was in contact with humans, a human gets affected. That potentially could be the start of something like a Pan D. He also pointed out that H5N1 isn't the only virus calculated right now in chickens and other types of animals, and that we can't forget that there are these other threats that also causing human infections, and also pose probably just as much, if not more, a Pan D risk than the H5 does. All right, and the scriptures tell us that we should not be ignorant of this devil's devices. What's that? I think it's 2 Corinthians 12. Two and 11. It says, lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. Right? And I seen a video the Apostle Tahar was going into earlier, going into vocab, how he's pretty much overweight. He need to stop eating those pizzas. But he brought a point out about we should take care of our health. He was going into being overweight and possible causes and foods that we eat, which again, in these holiday seasons, it's a lot of carbs, a lot of fatty foods that does contribute to bad health. The pork, the shrimp, all that's going to be at these gatherings, right? And then what I noticed today, in these past few days actually, is that it's rained more than it has in a while. And in the aftermath of last week's, rain, whatever you call it, a storm or whatever it was a lot more people coughing and sneezing. So with all this being piled up, it could very well be another scamdemic. Now, this is another article. Let me see. That I found is interesting because it says BC, which stands for British Columbia Youth H5N1 diagnosis, anti-whistleblower ag-gag laws help global Pan Ds grow and spread. So it says a teen in British Columbia recently became critically ill after becoming infected with H5N1. H5N1 is a highly pathogenic strain of bird flu. Outbreaks of avian influenza in livestock and flocks on industrial scale chicken and dairy farms, so-called factory farms, in the U.S. are raising alarm bells for public health across the world. Mainstream commercial animal agriculture is conducted in an intensive way in often cramped and unhygienic environments. These conditions are ideal for new viruses to jump from animals to humans. Beyond potentially lethal pathogens, The conditions in factory farms also raise concerns about air and water contamination and greenhouse gas pollutions that exacerbate climate change. Meanwhile, dangerous conditions for workers and considerable animal suffering aid, add compound concerns for an already controversial industry. You know, and this would be fitting, for these people, because here it is, we're in a time of war, right? Ukraine, Israel, the earth is in a time of war, and America, which is also, why we know this place is the land of unwalled villages, that the well is carelessly, you know, Americans, are in la la land, you in folly mode. Tells us in Ezekiel, I'm just quoting various precepts. Let me see. Ezekiel 21. It says, in verse 9, Son of man, give the people this message from the Lord. All right, as a prophet, this is the message you're supposed to be giving. Obviously there's no good times coming. All right, when there's scares of World War III and the use of it talks of the use of nuclear missile, you can't possibly think, which these people don't do that, but you cannot possibly think that better times are coming. Do you not know that wars, means a further food shortage? Especially for Americans, as we, import most, a lot of our goods and services. You add that on top of Trump, which I seen that earlier this week too, how Trump was apparently going to tax Mexico, for the immigrant crisis, so they could just very well retaliate and say, fuck you, America, and if not necessarily stop their shipments to come here, raise the prices. But again, with all that being said, let's read this. Son of man, give the people this message from the Lord. A sword is sharpened, is being sharpened and polished. It is sharpened for terrible slaughter and polished to flash like lightning. Now will you laugh? All right. And these are so-called merry holidays. You turn on the radio, there's various Christmas carols being sung. Everybody's more in a friendlier mood. All right. But will you laugh when you truly understand what's going to happen? All right. According to the scriptures, it is already written what will happen, not what might happen again, but what will happen. 2 Ezra 15:1. Behold, speak thou in the ears of my people the words of prophecy, which I will put in thy mouth, saith the Lord, and cause them to be written in paper, for they are faithful and true. Fear not the imagination against thee, let not the incredulity of them trouble thee that speak against thee. For all the unfaithful shall die in their unfaithfulness. Behold, saith the Lord, I'll bring plagues upon the world, the sword, famine, death, and destruction. All right, so here it is. You're looking at a situation in the Middle East or just in the eastern part of the world as if it can't affect you. But we just read that the Lord will bring plagues upon the world. All right, so when you understand how the economy works, all right, it works largely on a bartering system. And again, when you look it up, America imports a lot of its goods. All right. So the sword hitting one place means a famine in another place. All right. Now no oil can get out of this strait, like with Israel and Iran. What if Iran just locks down the Strait of Hormuz? Or various seas, get locked down? How can shipping move? It can't. All right. It says, for wickedness have exceedingly polluted the whole earth, and their hurtful works are fulfilled. And this place is wholly wicked. So again, you cannot rule out that famine is coming, that death is coming. As we just read the article, more culling of animals. All right, and the ones that so-called made it through to the stores, that can bring forth death. All right. Hey, but us of the hopeful elect, because we still live here, we still got to eat this food too. The Lord promised us that He would deliver us. Right. This precept comes to mind as I think about the famine and the pestilences that surely will hit the people. He shall cover thee, Psalms 91 and 4. He shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid of the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day. All right, which is going to be the end goal, the end game, the nuclear missiles that hit this place. Nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness. All right, and there's various pestilences that's walking to and fro on the earth now. Nevertheless, the Lord is going to hold us down. And amongst us, especially us over here at Great Millstone, in our epistles, I always hear brothers, which I bring it out as well. Our mindset is to pray, work out, fast, study. So in our regiment, just us over here, our regiment is that of course, first and foremost, putting Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai first, and also caring for our health. It says, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. All right. And we have the recipe for success. Meanwhile, this world is just waiting on destruction at the end of the day. All right. Again, here it is. You taking part in these pagan holidays, which is against the Heavenly Father. And then in these pagan holidays, you're eating things that the Lord deems as unlawful, such as shrimp, pork, crab, duck. All right. So these people is in a no-win situation. So when that sword and famine does hit, they're going to be in for a rude awakening. All right. And then the so-called perennial prophets of doom, you're going to find out that we were right. We are not in a time of mirth, if you haven't noticed. Just let me see. All right, yeah, so that was pretty much it. Oh, what's this about? Hold up. Oh, okay. Oh, let's get into this real quick. World leaders see Pan D lockdowns as practice for climate lockdowns. And Lord willing, I may just have to put this on my backup page for a little bit to see how it goes. The fuck? To see how it goes first, because Esau's quick to hit you with a medical misinformation. So it says, it might feel that the era of lockdowns and medical tyranny are behind us, but world leaders think otherwise. In fact, members of the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, and the United Nations view Pan D lockdowns as a practice run for future climate lockdowns. These individuals who believe they can rule over the population and dictate people's lives claim that global lockdowns were positive for the environment because carbon emission because carbon Salaki, 1 second, Aki. Alright, it says because carbon emissions fell 5.4% during periods of inactivity. To achieve net zero carbon emissions and prevent the world from going off a carbon cliff by 2030, these globalists suggest the need for intermittent lockdowns and other more discreet economic and energy controls to save the planet and protect us all from global catastrophe. However, these global plans are really just veiled wealth transfer schemes that threaten human rights, the rule of law, energy independence, national food sovereignty, and the progress of growth of civilization. Let me jump down to this part. This part seems interesting. It says climate lockdowns will be more calculated. Mariana Mazzucato, who serves on the United Nations High-Level Advisory Board on Economic and Social Affairs and as a chair of the World Health Organization's Council on the Economic of Health for All, openly floated the concept of climate lockdowns as a necessary measure to fight global warming. Mazzucato, also an agenda contributor to the WEF, proposed draconian restrictions to human activity, such as banning private vehicle use, outlawing the consumption of red meat, and enforcing extreme energy-saving measures. She argued that fossil fuel companies should cease drilling altogether. She justifies this centrally controlled chaos by claiming that a climate catastrophe is imminent unless drastic actions is taken. By using climate fear propaganda to dominate the world, global leaders inadvertently provide insight into the central planning behind the CV. Manufacturing a crisis requirement, persistent terror and propaganda, and an appeal to central government control as the solution to the manufactured crisis. Oh, okay. It says CV lockdowns, economic upheaval that led to mass job losses and caused severe disruptions in supply chains. A massive wealth transfer took place during the hysteria. Populations were left scrambling for toilet paper, choking on their air and begging central authority figures for their freedom to come out of their own homes. The economic aftermath was a stagflationary crisis that many continue to suffer from today. During these manufactured crises, the global elite were not just toying with ideas of public health and safety, but rather acclimating the public to an increasingly authoritarian state where freedom and personal choices are subordinate to globalist objectives. These lockdowns were merely a template for future climate lockdowns. In her own words, Mazzucato declared that the crisis of climate changing, health, and the economy are interconnected. The goal of this interconnected crisis, a global overhaul of economic structures and a radical departure from capitalism, with climate lockdowns and carbon taxes as one of the primary tools. Under this totalitarian vision, social punishments will be imposed on population deemed unwilling to reduce their carbon output. And this also, as I'm reading it, will inevitably lead to the culling of more cattle, right? Because that's another thing that's saying, cows contribute to more CO2, which contributes to what do you call that? Global warming, shit like that. All right. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Right? But point I'm making out of all these articles is that change is coming and it's not going to be for the good. And if you are wise, you'll be more focused on getting yourself together, at the judgment of the Lord, because the Lord is coming to judge. Right? Scriptures say, in accordance to these so-called holidays, Ecclesiastes 7 and 1, a good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of one's birth. So, a good name, I brought verse 1 out, even though the point is at verse 2, because you want to have a good name in the eyesight of the Lord. All right? Now, it's better. Let me read it again, Salakia. A good name is better than precious ointment. All right? So, our works need to be more in serving the Lord, fearing Him, doing what's right in His sight, praying, fasting, and preparing for these days to come. All right? As, the so-called worldly vibe is really out there now, a stronger one. We have to be stronger in the Lord. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for that is the end of all men, and the living will lay it to heart. It says, sorrow is better than laughter, for by the sadness of the countenance, the heart is made better. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. All right. And again, if you're watching, you understand that the earth is leaning towards destruction, bad times, and therefore should you make mirth? So if that, shalom to the elect.